Hello everyone, I'm Christos Laudias, a research lecturer at the CUREX Center of Excellence at the University of Cyprus, and together with Elina Argyridou, who is a research associate at the center, we welcome you to this webinar on human-centric cyber hygiene. This webinar is organized in the context of the Horizon 2020 project CUREX and presents material, findings and methodologies developed as part of the project deliverables on the aspects of cyber hygiene. Our team at the University of Cyprus is leading the work on cyber hygiene, and we would like to acknowledge the contribution from other CUREX partners, including the teams at the academic institutions University of Greenwich and Universitat Politecnica de Madrid, as well as the end-user healthcare organizations Serviciu Madrileno de Salud, Granollers Hospital, and Karolinska Institute. This is the outline of the webinar. We will start with the introduction and background covering the cyber threats in healthcare, the definitions of cyber hygiene, the state of the art on cyber hygiene, the commercial solutions for cybersecurity training and awareness, as well as some recommendations by cybersecurity organizations. Next, we will provide the details of the proposed human-centric cyber hygiene solution that is a survey-based risk assessment methodology for recommending optimal human-centric controls to manage various human-related cybersecurity and data privacy risks based on the identified risk strategy. Finally, we will present and discuss the results and findings from the application of the cyber hygiene methodology to the three CUREX healthcare organizations. Traditionally, healthcare has been one of the main targets for adversaries and always among the top 3 most affected domains as reported by the Verizon Data Breaches Investigation Report. Very often, it is the most affected one. According to the 2020 report, there was a significant increase in the number of breaches and incidents reported within the healthcare, from 521 versus 304 in the 2019 report. The US Department of Health and Human Services points out that the healthcare industry has the highest data breach cost of any industry at an average of $408 per record and $2.2 million per organization. In 2016, the healthcare industry as a whole lost $6.2 billion to data breaches. IBM notes that in 2020, the healthcare domain had experienced data breaches with significantly more monetary implications than other domains. The most expensive country to experience a data breach is the United States of America, with about $8.64 million per incident and with an average time of 280 days to identify and contain a breach. While the average worldwide data breach cost for all domains was $3.86 million, the healthcare domain breaches resulted in huge losses of $7.13 million. According to the InfoSecurity magazine, 38% of healthcare organizations and 26% of business associates have experienced personal information theft cases of both patients and customers. With 64% of healthcare organizations and 67% of business associates lacking the strategy to protect patients' data, these data can be compromised. Furthermore, it has been reported that 59% of healthcare organizations and 60% of business associates would need sufficient security budget to improve controls or safeguards to reduce data breaches. The top 5 cyber threats for the healthcare sector according to the US Department of Health and Human Services, as outlined in their publication Health Industry Cybersecurity Practices Managing Threats and Protecting Patients, are email phishing, ransomware, loss or theft of hardware, insider accidental or intentional data loss, and attacks against smart medical devices. Along the same line, the most prominent cyber threats in the healthcare sector, according to the Center for Internet Security, are ransomware, data breaches, distributed denial of service attacks, insider threat, and business email compromised and fraud scams. For instance, ransomware is a type of malware that encrypts the victim's data and threatens to either publish them, exposing the victim's reputation and violating privacy, or block any access to it. To release the data, cyber criminals request a ransom which may be paid using Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies. The most common attack method for delivering and installing the malware are phishing emails with an infected attachment, luring the user to click on a malicious link, or having the user view an advertisement that contains the malware. Criminals have access to services known as ransomware as a service that aid them with their goal to undertake ransomware attacks, as we will see next. These services not only increase the efficacy of attackers, but also enable even amateur hackers to pursue more sophisticated attacks of higher impact. The ongoing COVID-19 pandemic has become a catalyst for increasing the risk posed to patients and healthcare personnel by cyber criminals who eagerly attempt to capitalize upon the current crisis. Cyber threat intelligence centers, such as the one of Deloitte, report a spike in phishing attacks, malspams, and ransomware attacks as a result of cyber criminals using COVID-19 as a bait to impersonate different brands, therefore misleading employees and customers. Inevitably, this leads to a progressive number of affected devices infected with malware instead of installing legitimate applications as they were advertised prior to the exploitation. On May 14, 2021, the Health Service Executive of Ireland suffered a major ransomware cyber attack which caused all of its systems nationwide to be shut down. The immediate costs amount to €100 million, but the overall cost could amount to €500 million. The attackers began by sending a malicious email in March 2021 that was opened after a few days, and the malicious Microsoft Excel file was downloaded, which allowed the attackers to access the HSE system and release the Cody ransomware. On August 1, 2021, the Lazio region in Italy suffered a ransomware attack which impacted the region's COVID-19 vaccination registration portal, thereby halting new vaccination appointments for days. While most media outlets are reporting that ransomware EXX ransomware was responsible for the attack, an Italian security researcher claimed to have evidence that Lockbit 2.0 was also involved. The attack entry point was the computer of an employee of a Regione Lazio contractor, and I guess that access to that computer was gained through social engineering techniques like email phishing. But what exactly is cyber hygiene? Vinton Cerf, an internet pioneer, introduced the term cyber hygiene in his statement to the United States Congress Joint Economic Committee on February 23, 2000. He highlighted that in the internet era, most of the vulnerabilities arise from those who use the internet, that is, companies, governments, academic institutions, and individuals alike, and they need to apply good practices to protect themselves and the rest of the community. According to the Cybersecurity Forum, cyber hygiene refers to activities that computer system administrators and users can undertake to improve their cybersecurity while online. According to the Digital Guardian, cyber hygiene is a reference to the practices and steps that users of computers and other devices take to maintain system health and improve online security. These practices are often part of a routine to ensure the safety of identity and other details that could be stolen or corrupted. Much like physical hygiene, cyber hygiene is regularly conducted to ward off natural deterioration and common threats. According to the European Network and Information Security Agency, ENISA, cyber hygiene is a fundamental principle relating to information security and, as an analogy with personal hygiene shows, is the equivalent of establishing simple routine measures to minimize the risks from cyber threats. In CUREX, we consider the previous definitions and take an employee-oriented approach to cyber hygiene. Specifically, we are interested in cybersecurity and data privacy aspects in the daily operations of the workforce in healthcare and focus on human-centric controls that can be applied to the healthcare employees for increasing their level of cybersecurity and data privacy awareness. Such control aim to improve cyber hygiene compared to technical controls, for example, installation of firewalls, etc., and can be applied by the Information Technology Department of an organization to protect the employees against cybersecurity and data privacy threats. There are not many research works which study the problem of preparedness of healthcare organizations. A good motivation for promoting cyber hygiene habits in an environment is found in the first work that shows the result of a survey about end users' behavior and knowledge on cyber hygiene. The survey included topics of security software, passwords, and phishing, among others. The results show that at least 20% of end users do not even use an antivirus software. One important finding is that even though there is not a statistical difference in knowledge about cyber hygiene among different age groups, older users tend to have more secure habits. These facts should be considered when creating a cyber hygiene campaign, which should be specifically designed for a target age group. The second work reports that while training programs have made it possible to raise awareness, in general, it does not appear to be enough to change the overall behavior. They propose to use the concept of social marketing in the information security behaviors. Social marketing tries to import the concepts of marketing to encourage a given population to behave in a way which will result in a social good. An effort to understand employees' behavior is done in the third work by using an approach based on social psychology. Employees usually work towards the primary objectives that they are paid for, which are known as production tasks. However, there are additional tasks too, which protect the individuals and the organization from harm. The problem is that these tasks usually require an effort from the employee's side, since they are not integrated in their habits. The authors propose to redesign these tasks so that they fit in some way in those habits and that the employees need to perform anyway. The fourth work makes an important mention to cyber hygiene, and it even identifies the employees as a human firewall to protect the electronic assets. Shadow behaviors represent workarounds made by public health sector's employees to cheat cybersecurity systems. The first work reports that these workarounds include sharing passwords or writing them down in visible places, and trust a person to keep pressing the spacebar to prevent timeouts, or even breaking the representation by, for example, having shadow notes that cannot be written in electronic health records. To some extent, the poor usability of some cybersecurity solutions in the health sector can be blamed for the employees' behavior because in many cases they add a lot of overhead. More specifically about cyber hygiene in the healthcare sector, the second work analyzes the perception of employees in the domain by carrying out personal interviews to several middle managers. In this work, it can be seen that most of the employees show a demotivation when they must follow a specific policy for data protection. To mitigate this, the author proposed to create a recognition and reward system through which the staff can obtain some intrinsic and or extrinsic benefits. They also propose the improvement of the communication, especially after training courses, staff empowerment and the involvement of employees in the communication of incidents, and how they could be avoided in the future by improving the security policies. Furthermore, they highlight that the organization should discover the processes and employees habitually perform with the aim to improve them. This can be done by observing real end-user behavior and not just by using surveys. The third work reveals that only basic recommendations for improving cyber hygiene are really incorporated in the healthcare sector. Current state of practice merely focuses on increasing the awareness by conducting an annual training on this matter, sending emails to employees periodically, and enforcing strong password policies emphasizing on changing passwords regularly, which has been proven to make employees to choose weaker passwords or even writing them down somewhere. More recently, the last work attempted to give conceptual and operational definitions for cyber hygiene using experts in the fields of cybersecurity, IT professionals, and psychologists. Online surveys and also procedures such as concept mapping and confirmatory factor analysis. They managed to isolate 18 distinct items that conceptually define and measure cyber hygiene, providing the first ever cyber hygiene inventory. Those 18 items belong to 5 different clusters that represent the sub-dimensions of cyber hygiene denoted with the acronym SAFETY. That is storage and device hygiene, authentication and credential hygiene, Facebook and social media hygiene, email and messaging hygiene, and transmission and browsing hygiene, while Y stands for you or yourself to highlight the responsibility of the individual user in achieving cyber hygiene. An analysis of the past breach incidents shows that more than 80% of the breaches were due to improper implementation of the protection mechanisms and could have been prevented with basic security controls. This indicates that modern approaches, strategies, and tools are necessary to raise awareness regarding cyber risks as well as people influence security more than technology, and cyber criminals know how to exploit human behaviors. A key prerequisite in increasing awareness and achieving a common understanding of cyber threats and security risks at all hierarchical levels is through training, especially computer-based trainings. Key functionalities of a security training program are awareness of threat and mitigating actions and behavioral conditioning toward cybersecurity. Other purposes include security communication and internal marketing campaigns involving posters, competitions, and advertising. Training and education can fulfill multiple objectives, including complying with the regulations that mandate security training, establishing behavioral guidelines supporting disciplinary processes, improving employee knowledge of security and risk topics, motivating required and desired security behaviors. As security training products in the market mature, each vendor differentiates their products and services in a variety of ways and continuously updating their contents. For instance, vendors are using varying content formats, lengths, and styles, including mobile capabilities to ensure that their audience can receive the same information in multiple forms. Focusing on gamification with an objective to make their audience heighten their security behavior and nudging such behaviors through rewards and recognition. Offering multi-language support, some including cultural variants and dialects of languages with an aim to reach a larger audience. Offering large libraries of pre-designed content to support and serve as additional supplemental campaign artifacts. Adjusting their prices to seek a larger share of small and mid-sized market, exploring possibilities of partnering with core security technology vendors such as employee monitoring vendors, endpoint detection and response vendors, endpoint protection platform vendors, secure email gateway vendors, data security vendors, and others. The Magic Quadrant for Security Awareness computer-based training from Gartner categorizes existing vendors in the market based on their ability to execute and completeness of vision towards cybersecurity. The ability to execute is a mixture of different criteria such as services and customer satisfaction in deployments of security, education, computer-based training programs, overall viability of the product or service, pricing, vendors' ability to meet changing client requirements, customer experience, and others. The quadrant is divided into the niche players, who are vendors providing security education matching specific use cases, the visionaries, who are vendors providing services that are good functional matches to general security education market requirements, the challengers, these are vendors having sustainable customer base and revenues and products that meet most market requirements, and finally, the leaders, who are vendors providing products and services matching customer requirements while demonstrating superior vision and execution of anticipated requirements. Let's see some figures about the cybersecurity for healthcare ecosystem in Europe. The number of healthcare professionals is more than 10 million. There are more than 15,000 hospitals. There are 28 national healthcare systems or social security systems and more than 25 security agencies and institutions. Therefore, the relevance of the healthcare cybersecurity topic and scale makes it necessary to act also when appropriate at the European level. Relevant European cybersecurity agencies include the European Union Agency for Cybersecurity, ENISA, which helps the European Commission, the member states, and the business community to address, respond, and especially to prevent network and information security problems. The European Cybersecurity Organization, that represents an industry-led contractual counterpart to the European Commission for the implementation of the cybersecurity contractual public-private partnership. And the main objective of EXO is to support all types of initiatives or projects that aim to develop, promote, and encourage European cybersecurity. In addition, the Critical Security Controls report prepared by the Center for Internet Security has a long list of cybersecurity as well as data privacy and protection controls. Specifically, the control number 14, Security Awareness and Skills Training, contains several human-oriented controls that target awareness raising and training of the workforce. These controls are much related to cyber hygiene as perceived within the CUREX project. Here are some recommendations by these cybersecurity organizations. First, raise cybersecurity awareness. Share cybersecurity-related information with healthcare staff in the organization. Build awareness internally by launching campaigns. One of the most challenging aspects of raising awareness about cybersecurity among users is overcoming the perception that it cannot happen to me. Therefore, education, training, and awareness activities must be continuous, and those who manage and direct the work of others must set a good example. Second, secure medical and portable devices. Because devices may be used in places where it can be visible by others, extra care must be taken by the user to prevent unwanted viewing of the electronic health information displayed on a laptop or handheld device. Protect the network and install a firewall, as hackers have a variety of methods for breaking into healthcare organizations' networks. Health IT departments need to use a variety of tools to try and keep them out. That includes techniques such as segregating networks so that an intruder into an area does not have access to all the data stored throughout the organization. Keep computers and credentials healthy. The medical practitioner needs to be familiar with the importance of healthy habits to maintain good health and reduce the risk of infection and disease. The same is true also for IT systems that must be properly updated so that they will continue to function properly and reliably. The recommendations are that all staff members have to know how to recognize possible symptoms of viruses or malware on their computers. Furthermore, all staff should use strong passwords and periodically changing passwords should be performed in the organization. Conduct risk and vulnerability assessment and perform intrusion testing and auditing. Security must be comprehensive, otherwise attackers will simply exploit the weakest link. Consequently, vulnerabilities need to be identified and efforts can then be focused on these particular areas. Thus, a coherent strategy is critical for improving the interoperability between systems and devices and at the same time eliminates potential weaknesses. Secure physical access and health information. Securing information physically should include policies limiting physical access, for example, securing machines in locked rooms, managing physical keys, and restricting the ability to remove devices from a secure area. Also, sensitive information on a desk, such as sticky notes, papers, and printouts, can easily be taken by thieving hands and seen by intrusive eyes. All sensitive and confidential information should be removed from the desk. Phishing attacks is a type of social engineering attack often used to steal user data, including login credentials and credit card numbers. It occurs when a hacker, masked as a trusted entity, defrauds a victim into opening an email, instant message, or text message. Users must be aware of phishing attacks and learn not to open malicious attachments or click on suspicious links and disable pop-up windows as they invite risks. These users should keep from installing software programs from unknown sources, especially links infected with malware or more recently ransomware. To this end, our human-centric cyber hygiene solution addresses several challenges. First, the cost of cybersecurity and data privacy incidents, especially in the healthcare sector, is rising globally. Technical IT-based measures are not sufficient to counter the attacks. And finally, the role of personnel in the chain of cyber defense is often neglected. The solution is a survey-based risk assessment methodology for cyber hygiene that focuses on the gaps and needs of individual employee groups. It identifies the most effective strategy to manage cybersecurity and data privacy risks and subsequently recommends targeted human-centric controls to implement the strategy. So this has multiple impacts. First of all, it increases the employee confidence in identifying and handling data privacy and security incidents. It supports the management team by recommending targeted controls that are tailored to the organization's specific needs, for example, culture, personnel knowledge, background, etc., as well as constraints. For example, what is the available budget and time to apply different human-centric controls. Our cyber hygiene methodology comprises 5 steps. The first step involves extracting knowledge and assessing the needs and gaps of different employee groups at healthcare organizations through a set of questions in a survey questionnaire. At the second step, the responses collected from the participants are processed and analyzed to evaluate the cybersecurity and data privacy risks and quantify them through their risk marking. At step 3, the most effective strategy to manage each risk is identified. At the fourth step, the human-centric controls that are mapped in advance with a specific strategy are recommended to implement the strategy. At the final step, the management team can apply the controls to the workforce to improve the situation. The existing body of knowledge, including known vulnerabilities, threats, guidelines, and recommendations, was used for defining the proposed survey-based risk assessment methodology, both in terms of the survey questionnaire as well as the recommended controls for addressing risk related to cyber hygiene. For example, driven by the list of top threats in healthcare, specific questions were included in the questionnaire to reveal how familiar are the employees working in this sector with these threats, if they are aware with relevant incidents both inside and outside their organization, whether they are able to recognize such incidents at the early stages, and how confident they feel to handle them. I will now pass the floor to Dr. Elina Argyridou to provide the details of the proposed cyber hygiene methodology, starting with the survey structure.
Here we describe the survey structure. In each healthcare institution, we identified 4 main employee groups. The administrative group, which includes the administration manager, secretary, reception, call center, human resources, and others. The medical clinical group, which includes the department manager, doctors, nurses, etc. The IT technical group, which includes the IT manager, IT staff, software developers, and others. And the executive security group, which includes the director, the subdirector, the hospital manager, etc. The first 2 employee groups, the administrative and the medical clinical, are the most popular groups since they have the most employees compared to the other 2 groups. IT technical and executive security groups have less people since these groups include only managers, chief officers, and technical staff. The survey is divided into 3 parts based on the above employee groups of each organization. The first part includes general questions for all employees from all groups. The second part has more specific questions which refer to the IT technical group, and the third part includes questions which refer to the executive security group. In addition, each survey question can be a single answer question or a multiple answer question. Survey questions have one of the following types in order to measure the respondents' awareness, agreement, adoption of cyber hygiene practices, knowledge, and satisfaction. Regarding these types, 1 shows the lowest value and going up to 5 will have the highest value of the impact which correspond to each question. Based on these marks, we can measure the awareness and understanding on cyber hygiene of each respondent, but also of each employee group in total. The aim of the survey methodology is to design effective processes to increase awareness and training on cyber hygiene. These processes include identification, analysis, monitor, evaluation, and treatment of various risks that each healthcare organization may have. By applying these risk processes, we estimate the risks by using the impact probability risk matrix with scoring system from 1 to 5. This matrix has 2 components, namely the risk probability, which shows the likelihood of a risk to happen, and the risk impact, which shows the importance and severity of the risk. By multiplying the risk probability with the risk impact, we get the risk evaluation marking that shows if the risk is low, medium, or high. Next, we can see the risk evaluation matrix, which is pointing to specific risks evaluation based on the risk evaluation marking. Risks evaluation point to specific risk strategies for raising cybersecurity and privacy awareness of different employee groups. In addition, risk strategies map to a recommended set of controls and measures to mitigate the risks of each employee group. When the risk is higher, then the training should be more often, for example, every week, starting from low level, like beginners. When the risk is lower, then the trainings are less often, for example, monthly or quarterly, and the level is higher. For example, advanced level content. Finally, if the risk is very low, then it's acceptable and the employees are acknowledged and rewarded. Survey questions are grouped in risk categories based on their topic and structure, which facilitates risk analysis and estimation of the risk profile of each employee group. The first part of the survey, which includes general questions for all employee groups, has 7 risk categories as shown in the table below. In addition, the second part, which is specialized to IT technical staff, has 4 risk categories, and the third part, which refers to the executive security group, includes 6 risk categories. Now, let's look at the table. The first column represents the name of the risk category, the second column includes the number of the survey questions, and the third column describes the risks of the corresponding categories. For example, Cybersecurity Awareness Risk category has this set of questions, and the risk is related with the employees that are not aware of cybersecurity threats in healthcare and related incidents. Another example is Communication Channels Risk category, which has this set of questions. The risk is about the limited number of communication channels that are available in the organization or preferred by employees and limited communication with IT personnel. Here we show how the methodology, as described before, is applied on the survey. In order to use the risk matrix, we define the risk impact and the risk probability. At the top table, the risk impact is defined with a scoring system from 1 to 5 based on the structure of the survey question. The lowest risk impact has the lowest mark, which is 1, while the highest impact has the highest mark, which is 5. Medium marks indicate medium risk impacts. At the bottom table, the risk probability is defined based on the total amount of the responses. When the total number of responses is high, then the likelihood of the risk to happen is higher, while when the total number of responses is small, then the likelihood is low. In order to calculate the risk marking, we apply this formula where we multiply the risk impact with the risk probability. Also, we multiply the product by the corresponding risk factor, which depends on the total number of questions of each risk category and the total number of responses of each employee group for each organization. To implement the high-level action plans for the risk strategies, as described before, we need relevant human-centric controls to be associated with each risk strategy. At the table, we define a set of candidate human-centric controls, which are 19 in total and are related to training, awareness, motivation, and rewarding. Furthermore, these controls are inspired by CIS Control 17 report and Panacea project and are properly adapted to the objectives of cyber hygiene within CUREX. For example, there are separated controls for cybersecurity and data privacy. Let's see a few examples from the table. Control C3, which is about implementing a cybersecurity awareness program. This awareness program ensures that employees understand and exhibit the necessary behaviors and skills to help ensure the security of the organization. Its related resource is CIS Subcontrol 17.3. Another example is Control C7, which is about training workforce on identifying social engineering attacks. This control includes employees training on how to identify different forms of social engineering attacks, such as phishing, phone scams, and impersonation calls. Its related resource is CIS Subcontrol 17.6. Next, we can see some controls that are adopted to incorporate the notion of nudges that are proposed in the Secure Behavior Nudging tool developed in the context of Panacea project. For example, Control C14 introduces nudges to motivate cybersecurity behaviors. This is about introducing nudges as behavioral interventions to motivate and encourage employees to adopt desirable cybersecurity behaviors that they are already aware of. Next, Control C15 introduces nudges to motivate data privacy behaviors. More specifically, it's about introducing nudges as behavioral interventions to motivate and encourage employees to adopt desirable data privacy behaviors that they are already aware of. We note here that nudges are behavioral interventions that usually take place timely, for example, during the daily work, rather than out-of-context training in the classroom. For example, nudges may include posters, color cards to encourage employees, like to abide by the clear desk policy or not to leave sensitive information on the desk or not to leave the workstation unlocked, etc. Furthermore, there are other controls that are introduced by CUREX and are inspired by guidelines and good practices applied across various domains. More specifically, Controls C12 and C13 concern the inclusion of cybersecurity and data privacy in the agenda of each meeting that takes place in the healthcare organization, while Controls C16 to C19 are intended mainly to acknowledge employees that behave responsibly and celebrate desirable practices within the organization on various occasions. The main idea for the high-level mapping of controls to the risk strategies is, as risk is increasing and the risk strategy changes from acceptance to checking, to monitoring, to reduction, and finally to mitigation, then the applied controls should move from the rewarding to motivation, to awareness, and finally to training controls to address and reduce the risk. The intuition is that, for example, the motivation controls assume some level of awareness to be effective. Therefore, these controls cannot help in the case of reduction or mitigation risk strategies, where lack of awareness or knowledge is observed. Moreover, the training controls are expected to have a larger impact in reducing the risk when they are combined or applied after awareness controls. Furthermore, awareness and training controls may have different implementation levels depending on the risk strategy. For example, they can be applied weekly, monthly, quarterly, semi-annually, or annually for beginners, intermediate, or advanced level content. Finally, the target audiences are the 4 employee groups. The table shows the risk categories for all employee groups with the corresponding group of controls for each risk strategy. Here we can see the demographics of survey respondents of the 3 CUREX healthcare institutions. The first column represents the employee groups, the second column is the population size, the third column represents the total number of responses, which is the sample size, and the last column shows the confidence interval. When the sample size is larger, the more certain we can be that the responses truly reflect to the population. This indicates that for a given confidence level, the larger the sample size, the smaller the confidence interval. However, the relationship is not linear. For example, doubling the sample size does not halve the confidence interval. As we can see from the tables, in some cases the total number of responses is much smaller compared to the population size. As a result, the confidence interval for some of the employee groups is not small enough. We note here that the survey was planned to be released in March 2020, but was delayed due to COVID-19 outbreak and reopened from mid-June to end of September of the same year. Next, we move to the analysis of the results and findings. The analysis of the results is performed with regards to 4 different aspects. More specifically, we have the following 4 dimensions. The healthcare organization, which includes the 3 CUREX healthcare institutions, the employee group with the 4 employee groups, the administrative, the medical clinical, the IT technical, and the executive security employee group, the specific risk category, which includes risk categories for all employee groups, and the specific survey question, which includes questions 8, 22, and 23 from the survey questionnaire. First, we present results for the first dimension, which is about the first healthcare organization. The x-axis represents the risk categories for all employee groups, while the y-axis represents the risk evaluation. For presentation purposes, the scoring system from 1 to 5 is used for the risk evaluation. Low risks are represented by 1, low-medium risks by number 2, medium risks by number 3, medium-high by number 4, and high risks have number 5. According to the risk evaluation matrix, these risks map to the corresponding risk strategy, which is followed by some actions and controls in order to mitigate and control them. The graph shows that risks from risk categories pertaining to all employee groups are between medium and medium-high, with risk strategies being monitoring and reduction. The risk category with the lowest risk is data privacy protection training, with medium risk by all employee groups, with monitoring bringing the corresponding risk strategy. In this case, the corresponding controls for monitoring these risks are C11, which is related to training control, C13, which is related to awareness control, C15 and C17, which are motivation controls. Training and awareness controls can be implemented semi-annually or quarterly with intermediate or advanced level content. Next, we present results for the same dimension for the second healthcare organization. From the graph, we can see that the risks are mostly medium and medium-high, with risk strategies being monitoring and reduction respectively. Furthermore, findings for the IT technical group show that the employees have high awareness on cyber hygiene, since the risk for the corresponding category is medium-low. In contrast, this group shows high risk for the risk category, secure connection and use of devices, which means that they need more controls and actions in order to avoid this risk compared to the other three employee groups. More specifically, the corresponding risk strategy in order to address this risk is mitigation, and the corresponding controls are C6, C9, C10 related to training controls, and C3, C4, C5 related to awareness controls. These controls need to be applied on a monthly or weekly basis with beginners content targeted to this specific group. Then we present survey findings for the second dimension, which is about the administrative employee group for all healthcare institutions. Similar to the previous graphs, the x-axis represents the risk categories for the administrative employee group, and the y-axis represents the risk evaluation score. The graph shows that risk category data privacy protection training has the lowest risk, which is medium level for all the organizations. In contrast, risk categories communication channels and secure connections and use of devices have the highest risk, since all employees from the three healthcare organizations have reached medium-high risk. For these cases, the corresponding risk strategy is reduction, with the recommended controls being C3, C4, C5, C6, C9, C10 related to awareness controls, and C17 related to motivation controls. Awareness controls need to be applied on a quarterly or monthly basis with intermediate level content targeted to the administrative employee group. In addition, we can observe that the first healthcare organization has higher risks, since most of them reach medium-high risks compared to the other two organizations. Therefore, the first healthcare organization needs to take immediate action and adopt more aggressive controls to improve the level of awareness and knowledge within the administrative personnel. Next, we present findings for the same dimension related to medical clinical employee group. The graph shows that cyber hygiene and data privacy protection training risk categories have the lowest risk with medium size, which need to be monitored with mild controls. In contrast, the communication channels risk category has the highest risk, since this employee group across all three CUREX healthcare organizations has reached medium-high risk. For this risk, the corresponding risk strategy is reduction, with recommended controls being C3, C4, C5 related to awareness controls, and C17 related to motivation controls. Awareness controls need to be applied on a quarterly or monthly basis with intermediate level content for the employees to be able to follow the communication channels and absorb the awareness messages. As a last observation, employees at the third healthcare organization show lower risks compared to the other two, since most of their risks are medium level. Following, we present findings related to the third dimension, which is about the specific risk category that pertains to all employee groups. The graph shows results regarding the cyber hygiene risk category, where most of the risks are medium level for all employee groups and all hospitals. We can see that the IT technical group from the second healthcare organization has the lowest risk, which is medium-low. In addition, there is only one risk that shows to be medium-high from the administrative employee group of the first healthcare organization. For this case, the corresponding risk strategy is reduction, with recommended controls being C3, C4, C12, C13 related to awareness controls, and C17 related to motivation controls. Awareness controls need to be applied every month or quarter with intermediate level content targeted to the administrative employee group at the first hospital. Here we present results for the same dimension regarding the communication channels risk category. From the graph, we can see that there is only one risk that is medium, and this comes from the first healthcare organization by the IT technical employee group. In contrast, this risk category shows to have many high risks, since most of them are medium-high for all employee groups for all healthcare organizations. Therefore, all the healthcare organizations in this case have to pay more attention and take more actions in order to address the risks by following a reduction risk strategy. The recommended controls are C3, C4, and C5 related to increase awareness on the available communication channels. This can be implemented on a monthly or quarterly basis with intermediate level content. In addition, by applying the control C17, a cybersecurity and data privacy champion in each department across the healthcare organization can undertake the role to guide his co-workers in taking full benefit of the available communication channels. Next, we present results for the third dimension related to cybersecurity awareness risk category. From the graph, we can see that there are 4 risks which correspond to medium-high risks at the first and second healthcare organizations for the administrative and medical clinical employee groups. The rest of the risks are medium level. The medium-high risks correspond to the reduction risk strategy, with the recommended controls being C11, C3, C5, and C12 related to training and awareness controls, and C17 related to motivation controls. Training and awareness controls need to be applied every month or quarter with intermediate level content targeted to the administrative and medical clinical employee groups at the first and second healthcare institutions. We move to the fourth dimension, which is related to a specific survey question. Here the graph shows results regarding the awareness of the employees on specific areas and tools regarding cybersecurity and data privacy threats for the first healthcare organization. From the graph, we can see that the most popular threat that employees are aware of is the insider, accidental, or intentional data loss, with the total number of responses being 57 out of 71. Then, loss or theft of hardware is following with 49 out of 71 responses. In addition, attacks against smart medical devices has enough responses, for example 42 out of 71, which is high enough compared to the other threats. Interestingly, a limited number of respondents across all employee groups seem to be aware of the social engineering threat, which is recognized as one of the top threats not only in the healthcare but other business domains as well. Next, we show findings related to the same dimension, which is about communication channels that are currently used in the first healthcare organization to raise awareness on cybersecurity and data privacy. The graph shows that communication channels which are currently used by most of the employees are email, with total number of responses being 47 out of 71, and corporate internet, with total number of responses being 50 out of 71. The rest of the channels are rarely used or not used at all by the employees. Finally, we show findings regarding communication channels that employees prefer to use in order to learn about cybersecurity and data privacy. Similar to the previous findings, people prefer to use emails and corporate intranet. In addition, people also prefer to use information sessions during staff meetings. This finding suggests that controls such as C12 and C13 for including cybersecurity and data privacy in the agenda of internal meetings can be beneficial. This can also be the case with the implementation of control C17 as the introduction of a cybersecurity and data privacy champion in a team or department can greatly facilitate the discussion and information exchange on these topics among the team members. Finally, employees at the first healthcare organization show less interest in trainings through videos, online training, and in-person training. Here we summarize the findings of the survey responses by giving some observations and remarks. Survey findings show that the third healthcare organization has less serious risks compared to the other two healthcare organizations for the administrative and medical clinical employee groups. This implies that employees at the third organization have higher level of awareness and knowledge on different aspects of cyber hygiene compared to the other two organizations. Furthermore, the results indicate that for the administrative and medical clinical employee groups, the risks are relatively high, with most of the risk categories having medium-high risk level. This is true especially for the first and second healthcare institution. Therefore, these organizations need to take immediate actions and adopt the recommended controls with the appropriate implementation level to increase awareness, understanding, and use of cyber hygiene best practices among these employees. This should be high priority as administrative and medical clinical employees are a large portion of the total workforce in each healthcare organization compared to the other two employee groups. Regarding findings about specific risk categories, the lowest risks are related to cyber hygiene, data privacy protection training, and data privacy protection awareness. For these cases, most of the risks show to be medium level, which shows that employees from all categories have some basic knowledge and acceptable level of awareness regarding cyber hygiene and data privacy issues. On the other hand, the risk categories with the highest risks are communication channels and secure connection and use of devices, where most of the risks are medium-high. Therefore, it is recommended that each healthcare organization takes further actions and applies the recommended controls associated with each risk in order to effectively address these risks. Finally, regarding findings and analysis using the fourth dimension, we can conclude that most of the employees from all the healthcare organizations are generally aware of the following threats: insider accidental or intentional data loss or theft of hardware, and attacks against mass medical devices. Surprisingly, social engineering is not among the top threats that the personnel in all three CUREX healthcare organizations is aware of. This means that all institutions need to give more attention to this threat through target awareness messages and threat-specific training, including the application of controls C7 and C8 for identifying social engineering attacks and performing mock social engineering exercises. Interestingly, only the employees at the third healthcare organization are familiar with ransomware, which is considered the top threat according to the CIS and is becoming increasingly popular among cyber criminals that target the healthcare sector. Therefore, target awareness and training programs should be implemented at the first and second healthcare organizations. Regarding the use of communication channels, we observe that most of the employees at the first and second healthcare organization currently use email and corporate intranet, while the latter is not so much used at the third healthcare organization. In addition, findings show that employees at the third organization use more communication channels like online training and information sessions during staff meetings, which are probably offered and better promoted at the third hospital as opposed to the first and second healthcare organization. With respect to the preferred communication channels, results show that apart from emails and corporate intranet, the employees at all three CUREX healthcare organizations also prefer to use information sessions during staff meetings, videos, online training, and in-person training. This suggests that the first and second healthcare organization need to act to introduce such communication channels, because the findings at the third healthcare organization imply that when multiple channels are in place, then the employees prefer all of them and have several options to receive and access the relevant material. Thank you for watching this video. We hope that you enjoy it.